Please join with me in the responsive reading found in your order of service. Too many miles I have traveled all alone. Show me the road. Strangers, strangers, everywhere I roam.
Show me the road that leads to my home.
Finding precious little peace and losing precious time.
Show me the road that leads to my home.
Good morning, and welcome to Fountain Street Church on this first Sunday of April. Soon the daffodils will bloom and our hearts will be singing. My name is Carol Koistra, and I am one of the 15 members whom you have elected to serve on your governing board. Each of the governing board members are assigned to a liaison to one of our church committees, and my assignment is to the music committee. That is a perfect fit for me, given music is definitely one of the major loves of my life. For over 20 years, I sang in our adult choir and loved every minute of it. For 6 years, I served on the organ committee, the catalyst group for the rebuilding of our amazing 7,980 pipes, 5 manuals, Austin organ, which is the largest pipe organ in the Midwest, if not beyond, and is played most Sundays by our organist, Marilyn. But today we have Bob Ruddy, our guest here, to play our wonderful Catherine the Great, as we affectionately call our pipe organ. Thank you, Bob. For the past 2 years, I have been singing with the Fountain Street Care Choir. We are a small group of singers who have sung to over 20 Fountain Street seniors or shut-ins. We singers feel very blessed to have this opportunity. April is a special music month at Fountain Street Church. Next week, April 10, at 4 p.m., our oratorio memorial concert will be presenting All the Voices We Have Heard, a Holocaust cantata by Donald McCullough and directed by our choir director, Gene Coburn. You may have received a flyer about this concert today, and you will find a banner and several posters throughout the church. This music is drawn from the haunting and deeply meaningful music composed by prisoners while incarcerated in Nazi concentration camps, and reminds us that the voices of all must be heard as we seek peace and harmony in our own lives and in our world. I hope that you will all attend this concert in memory of our Fountain Street Church loved ones. On Sunday, April 24, at 3 p.m., the Fountain Street Church Music Committee will present Piano Jazz in Our Sanctuary, featuring West Michigan favorites John Shea and Fountain Street's own Robin Connell, with Warren Jones on bass. This music will be played on 2 magnificent Fountain Street grand pianos, one being a 1920s Grand Steinway, and the other a Grand Chaumont piano, which for years graced the heritage home of Ann and Tom Logan and was generously donated to Fountain Street Church. Thank you, Tom. We hope to see you all on Sunday afternoon, April 24. These 2 concerts are part of the richness of being at Fountain Street Church. We have one added blessing, though, in the music area, and that is our senior minister, who has a degree in music and once hoped to be a successful composer of music, but instead settled for being a wonderful composer of words. I appreciate both parts of him. The bumper sticker on my car says, Sing for your soul. Something I do every Sunday morning when I sit in this unique and beautiful and challenging liberal church for our 11 a.m. worship service. And now, let us hear the power of music as we listen to our adult choir sing for their soul.
I was glad when they said
That's the kind of music that makes you want to take a deep breath and go, That's both for the satisfaction and the gratitude, so thank you. Splendid. So I think it's time for the sermon, right? I'm not good at details. What can I say? I need a keeper. My keeper needs a keeper. Two passages, one scriptural and one not. The scriptural passage, as recorded in the Revised Common Lectionary used among most Protestant and Catholic churches, is from the Gospel according to John. It's a post-resurrection moment. But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." Excuse me. But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger in the mark of the nails, and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, the disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." According to a federal lawsuit, as I read this article from the Washington Post, in Aiken, South Carolina, on October 2nd, 2014, two occupants of a car who were black were stopped by police officers who were white. Dashcam video shows the officers stop and search a black couple. Lakeia Hicks and Elijah Pontoon were in Hicks's car when they were pulled over by Officer Chris Medlin. Lakeia Hicks was driving. She had recently purchased the car, so it had temporary tags. In the video, Officer Medlin asks Hicks to get out, then tells her that he stopped her because of the, quote, paper tag on her car. There's no law against temporary tags in South Carolina so long as they haven't expired. Medlin then asks Pontoon, the other person in the car, for identification. Since he was in the passenger seat, Pontoon wouldn't have been required to provide ID, even if the stop had been legitimate. Still, he provides his driver's license to Medlin. A couple of minutes later, Medlin tells Hicks that her license and tags check out. This should be the end of the stop, which again should never have happened in the first place. Instead, Medlin orders Pontoon out of the vehicle and handcuffs him. He also orders Hicks out of the car. Pontoon then asks Medlin what is happening. Medlin ignores him. Pontoon asks again. Medlin responds that he'll explain it all in a minute. Several minutes later, Medlin tells Pontoon, "Because of your history, I've got a dog coming in here, going to walk a dog around the car." Parenthetically, he had an arrest record. About 30 seconds later, he adds, the officer, "You're going to pay for this one, boy." In the next few minutes, Pontoon was placed on the ground, and officers did a cavity search on the ground, outside the car, in front of everyone. Found nothing. He wasn't arrested. No citations were given. Because black lives should matter more than this. First, let me say that I completely hated creating this sermon. It's going to be too religious and way too cerebral and, didactic stuff. You just want to drop over in a snore. Of course. Didactic does mean to teach, and we value education. But good teaching doesn't feel didactic, does it? And people who come to church want to be inspired, and that's what religion does well. But good religion inspires without being preachy. You can see why I could hate writing a sermon from time to time. It's a no-win situation. So I'm going to do the religious part right up front. If there were, which one is correct? I don't use my subjunctive voice nearly well enough. If there were an apostle of liberal religion, Thomas would be the one. He is the biblical version of the fellow from Missouri. You got to show me before I start believing you. Seeing is believing, after all. Now, to claim Thomas as the patron apostle of religious liberals is a little odd, I know, as what could be more difficult for religious realists like us and spiritual skeptics like us than this whole wild claim of rising from the dead? No, we can understand Thomas being a little reluctant to buy the story. Sensible people should be skeptical of those things. And Thomas, remember, he was already a disciple. He knew Jesus. He believed he was the Messiah. He didn't really need to go the whole distance. In fact, the rest of the disciples and Mary Magdalene had already seen him. When we hear our friends tell us something happened, we tend to believe them, don't we? They're trustworthy. But not Thomas. 11 other people he knew, were not enough to make him believe. He needed to see for himself. Good for him. To be Christian is to believe Jesus was raised from the dead. It has been so since these Gospels were written. That's their whole point. And ever since, belief has been a virtue and doubt a vice, at least when it comes to religious matters. Of course, in other matters, doubt is a virtue. Look before you leap, we learn. Cavea temptor, the Latin phrase says, buyer beware. I found this one in Chinese. Let's see if I can say it correct. Yi huo shen, zi hui ye shen, yi huo qian, zi hui ye qian, which means deep doubts, deep wisdom. Little doubts, little wisdom. Some of us who are old enough remember Doveryai no proveryai, the Russian one of which Reagan was so fond. Trust but verify. Everywhere else in life, skepticism is considered the mark of wisdom and astuteness, but not in religion. The story of this church and others like it is the story of doubt about religion. There have always been doubters and skeptics everywhere. Thomas is just one. But it was not until 4 centuries ago that doubters began to have evidence to support their reluctance. The scientific revolution, as some call it, that really did make a difference. And I can tell you exactly when doubt and faith, religion and science began to unravel. The year was 1633. Galileo Galilei had already been told by the Inquisition in Rome about not to promote the, quote, foolish and absurd philosophy that the earth revolved around the sun. He obeyed for a number of years, but a new pope was elected, a buddy, a friend, and he thought maybe he could try again. He was wrong. He was hauled back before the Inquisition and found, and I'm quoting now from the document, vehemently suspect of heresy, and he was sentenced to house arrest for life. Legend says that as he formally recanted his belief, saying aloud that the earth did not move, that he muttered under his breath as he left the room, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. Since that day, the power of religion has diminished and the power of science has grown. The consequences of that change are still being felt, often in dogged resistance by some religious folks who ironically employ all the modern technology created by science to prove that science is wrong. My task today, as much as I'd like it to be, is not the history of that controversy and of that experience. You can find out for yourselves. Go, read about it. It's magnificent. No, my message today is rather more prosaic. It is that neither religion nor science, neither faith nor doubt are enough by themselves. Far from a choice between faith and doubt, science and belief. We need both our faithful and our skeptical natures to truly set us free. In older times, this need of both was obvious. While Europe was mired in the Dark Ages, Baghdad was the center of Islamic faith and science that the West would not discover for centuries. A Hindu Maharaja in Jaipur built not only a great temple to the god Krishna, but an enormous astronomical observatory in the 1700s that could and still does measure time within 2 seconds accuracy. John Milton, the great devout Puritan, laid out the modern theory of free inquiry himself. He wrote, the light which we have gained was given us not to be ever staring on, but by it to discover onward more things remote from our knowledge. In other words, every fact we learn is a step to another fact, one beyond that. I don't have this quote in front of me, but Isaac Newton commented that he felt sometimes like a child playing with a shell on the seashore, absorbed in the beauty of that while not ignoring the sea of truth beyond. And what people sometimes forget is that Charles Darwin, good morning, Charles, joined the voyage of the Beagle, not on a whim, but because he was studying natural philosophy as part of his studies for the Anglican priesthood. When he came back, he changed his mind. And my favorite scientist come theologian, Joseph Priestley, great British preacher on the dissenting side who discovered oxygens between Sundays. I cannot discover where I put my keys. And yet Joseph Priestley managed to be a pioneering Unitarian minister and the discoverer of oxygen. We should all feel a little chided by that. Our times, though, right now, it is rare to find a scientist who darkens the door of a church willingly, and it's rare to find a preacher who can champion the faith without also lashing the scientist. We are in an age of division between religion and science, a competition between faith and doubt. And this is larger than religion and science. We know that. Have you looked at our politics lately? It's become so polarized that we are no longer talking to each other, but trying to obliterate the other. Our economy is now so stratified that people who have not grown up with wealth have no way of knowing what wealth is like, and vice versa. They live so far apart that they cannot understand each other. Our communities are so balkanized that we choose where we live by zip codes and school districts. Our lives have been fragmented in so many ways. We live in spiritual, political, demographic, and economic enclaves, within which, of course, the truth is clear, and to express doubt is to show disloyalty to whatever group you belong to. In such times as these, institutions like ours find it hard to flourish. We're too religious for the true skeptics. We're too skeptical for the truly faithful. We struggle as the passionately positive on either end are ever more sure of their rightness. And worse, churches like ours are dismissed by those at both ends as pusillanimous compromisers rather than champions of truth. Who would want to be part of a church like that? Well, you do. So I'm here to do two things. I'm here to salute those who have walked with this church over the years, who have kept faith in that old-fashioned sense of loyalty, who, as Stephen Spender put it in his beautiful poem, who wore at their heart the fire's center. You who came through the doors in 1990 or 1980 or 1970 or 1960 or even earlier, who were religious liberals when it was really hard, when no one even believed it was possible. You wore at your heart the fire center. And I say that as someone born elsewhere, and though I only came here in 2005, I have been a religious liberal my whole life. It was hard growing up without having to tell people it was Unitarian Universalist and have them say, "So you're with that Reverend Moon fellow?" No. It was tough. You know it was tough. I was no. I'm reminded of a scene in a sitcom from years ago in the 1980s in which a young man is having an emotional crisis and an older gentleman says, "Can I get you a priest?" And the young man says in his weeping, "I'm a Unitarian." And so the friend says, "So you want a math teacher?" Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, it hurt too. We have been peripheralized, marginalized, derided, and ignored as not being a real church, not being real anything, when in fact we know we are. But I also wish to salute those, whether you're here for the first time or the 10th time, who are asking yourselves if this is the place you need to be. Those who are making this church a part of their lives right now and are embracing even now its commitment to seeking the truth through faith and doubt. Later this month, we will be inviting people who wish to become formal members and sign our membership book. But even those who have not or don't go even that far, but who take part in our worship, come to our programs, who give money, you are courageous too in these times. It's not easy being at Fountain Street Church. To walk between the passionate poles is to be caught in the crossfire of passionate certainty. But we here know how truly radical it is to claim the center. Extremism is cheap courage. It's a cul-de-sac where the only thing you have to defend is against the other, where you can be safe from doubt because you are protected by living in a corner of reality. Liberal religion stands in the open field under an open sky and takes no shelter in danger. We do that because we know that in the end, this is where truth comes. It doesn't come to the corners. It doesn't come to the cosseted sections. It doesn't come to the local spots. Truth happens where faith and doubt meet and quarrel and struggle and keep quarreling. We do this because we know this is the only place where hope resides, real hope. Because if our only hope is in another life, then what good is this life? And if our only hope is in this life, why are we doing it? We need both the hope of tomorrow and the presence of today. We do this because we know there is no future where ideologies and religions live in feudal fortresses hoping to outlast, outgun, and outlive the other. We do this because we know the future needs everyone for anyone to survive. Our mere presence on the landscape of religion is that message. And the fact that people are annoyed by our presence is proof of our power. If you are here, you know this. I'm literally preaching to the choir. I can see some of you nodding. Yes, preach it, they're saying. You're allowed to say it, by the way. And our belief, as firm as Thomas as he encountered the risen Jesus, is that we are not the only ones in Grand Rapids who feel this way. Then you're saying, why aren't they here? Well, we could change this or that, throw more lights on the walls, play more movies, get a more exciting preacher. All sorts of options are there. But you know another truth. The way that people find us is not by putting on a fancy show or providing this or that service that they receive. It isn't to get all polished up and snazzy. That works for a while. But the way to grow a spiritual community is to be a spiritual community so alive and so real that fear cannot dissuade them and us, that no one can ignore us, and that none can deny is saving lives and hearts and minds every day. If we want people to follow our way, we have to be a people that others want to join. Which isn't to say we aren't, but we can do better. Now, I have a way to help you do this. That is the point of leadership, is it not? To show you a way. You don't have to go. We're a free church. Ignoring leadership is a Greek tradition among liberals. As you will see in our monthly newsletter, I'm going to make a demonstration project of my commitment. The White Pine Trail begins here in Grand Rapids at Riverside Park and goes all the way to Cadillac, Michigan. It's exactly 100 miles. I'm going to walk that entire trail between the 23rd and the 27th of this month, 20 miles a day. It's my symbolic commitment to go the distance for Fountain Street Church. I'll be here on Sunday morning. I'll say amen, and I'm out of here. But I'll be back on Thursday night. Now, why do I tell you this? Because I want you to go the distance in other ways. First, I want as many of you who can to put $1 a mile down on my trip. $100. I've had 2 people already say yes. You know, I'm doing this because, if you haven't already figured it out, we've had to make reduction after reduction over the years as income and things have fallen. But I've discovered something. You cannot downsize into a bigger church. It's not possible. If you believe we can and should be bigger, we got to be bigger. Bigger in our commitments, bigger in our capacities. That belief, that faith, if you will, is necessary before the fact of becoming a larger institution. We have to believe it is possible, believe it is good, believe it is right, and do something if we want others to share in that hope. So, I expect at least, and I underline the words at least, 100 commitments of $100 for me to walk 100 miles. You have a full year to pay it. You don't have to do it in a week. But I expect you to do it. And by the way, I have a pen and I have a piece of paper, and if you want to sign up, just let me know. If I don't hear from you, you will be hearing from me. That's one way. Probably the easiest. Here comes the hard way. I want as many of you who can to help someone you know find this church. The good news is you already know them. You already know that person. You do. You may know 2 or 3. In fact, I greeted one this morning. Sarah, thanks for bringing your friend. Is it okay so far? All right. That's a nice United Methodist saying we're doing okay. The reason I say this is that people join people, not preachers. People join people, not programs. The only way for us to find all the people that should be here is to go and get them, because they are friends. People with a little fear that if they walk in here, the roof will fall or some lightning bolt will snatch them away. It won't happen, I guarantee. People who are not here because they're afraid that somehow people will look down on them. Well, you know, that's the price of faith sometimes. But we look up to those who come here. I look up to you. I expect at least, underline at least, 100 new participants in Fountain Street Church by the end of this year. That's not a lot. I'm looking at 200 to 300 people right now. It's easy. You call up your friend, Bill, I'd like you to visit Fountain Street Church with me next week. I'll even take you to breakfast first. Will you come? That was hard, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. So there it is. 3 ways we can go the distance for this church, because we have to do this kind of work. It is not in gussying up what we do. It is becoming who we say we are in a big way. There it is, friends. I'm going to go the distance for Fountain Street Church because I have faith in you, but I also doubt that it will happen just because I have faith. There it is, my friends, a challenge to walk with me so that you can find out what you believe and what you doubt and put them both to work. A challenge to walk to walk the talk, to live our love, to be our faith out loud and in front of God and everybody. In the end, friends, I'm saying let's show the world a religion beyond belief, but never beyond believing. Amen and amen.
Go now in peace, go now.